Remember when lunchboxes were metal, TV had only 3 channels, and when the future meant bright chrome and rocket ships? Welcome to the Rocket Kid Chronicles by David Stafford.
Chapter 7. Creations and Catastrophes. The Great Meltdown of '65. Before the world was enchanted by Pinterest and the term DIY had morphed into a verb, there existed a magical realm known as my mother's kitchen table. On languid weekend afternoons, this unsuspecting surface transformed from a humble command center into a full-fledged arts and crafts battleground. My sister and I, the untrained apprentices of this creative crusade, armed ourselves with safety scissors, tempera paints, and an almost religious sense of wonder. In my mother's hands, ordinary household items had the uncanny ability to be reborn as vaguely decorative marvels. Mom had a nearly supernatural talent for transmuting scraps into artistic triumphs. She would scatter old magazines, delicate paper doilies, string, and a haphazard pile of scissors that couldn't have sliced through warm butter on their best day. Then came the proclamation. "We're making people chains!" With a few folds and snips, like a conjuring trick, a row of identical paper figures would materialize, hand in hand, united in eternal solidarity. It was nothing short of magic. We enhanced these creations with crayons, turning them into a psychedelic circus cast with green hair, orange shoes, and purple faces that would make even the most whimsical clown weep with envy. Mom relished variety. We tackled papier-mâché masks with strips of newspaper lovingly soaked in a flour paste that achieved the consistency of medieval mortar. We constructed popsicle stick houses that looked as if they had survived a direct hit from a Category 4 hurricane. We glued macaroni to cardboard, sprayed it gold, and declared it fine art. They were beanbags. Stitching them was one thing. Watching them spring leaks within hours was quite another. And let's not forget the fateful day she introduced us to plaster molds. We ended up with a lopsided menagerie of animals drying on the counter, looking more like mutant zoo exhibits than anything remotely lifelike. Every project commenced with Mom's unwavering enthusiasm and concluded with her stoic patience as we squabbled over who would lay claim to the last pipe cleaner. She never raised her voice. Instead, she smiled, tidied up the chaos, and said, "You did great." Only years later did I grasp the deeper lesson she was imparting. Not merely the craft itself, but invaluable life skills, resourcefulness, imagination, and the art of making the most of what you had. We also held painting sessions, where Mom would pour thick tempera into chipped jelly jars and hand us oversized brushes. "Paint something cheerful," she'd say, her only directive, leaving the rest up to our vivid imaginations. My sister leaned toward rainbows and ponies, while I gravitated toward rockets, robots, and occasionally a monster that bore a striking resemblance to my teacher, in the form of a menacing stick figure. The air grew thick with the aromas of paint, glue, and unbridled ambition. By dinner, we were both adorned in colorful splotches, like refugees from an art festival gone awry. On occasion, we took our creativity to the next level by crafting our own paints, an endeavor that felt nothing short of alchemy. Mom would gather broken crayons, dropping them into an old metal cupcake pan before warming the oven. Soon, the kitchen filled with a faint, waxy aroma as colors merged into glossy puddles. In a race against time, we would rush to dip our brushes while the wax was still warm, creating a fleeting moment of artistic magic. Our most memorable attempt at self-sufficiency occurred during a rare, quiet afternoon when Mom took a nap. Before drifting off, she left us with strict instructions to avoid anything hot or sharp. Naturally, I took this as an invitation to explore our leaderless household. The silence felt like a green light, and I felt an overwhelming obligation to create. So, I decided to reproduce our crayon as paint experiment. But since I couldn't find the metal cupcake pan, I reached for a plastic one, which, as we would soon learn, was highly combustible and decidedly ill-suited to our artistic ambition. Once the pan was in the oven, we cranked the dial to what we guessed was the melting temperature. Moments later, the kitchen filled not with the sweet scent of warm colors, but with the unmistakable odor of a chemical disaster. The pan didn't just melt, it warped, sagged, and burst into festive little flames. Smoke billowed out like a NASA launch gone horribly wrong. My sister screamed. I, in a moment of misguided heroism, fanned the smoke with a potholder and shouted, "It's fine!" Spoiler alert, it absolutely was not. Mom appeared shortly after, half awake and fully alarmed. With the deftness of a seasoned firefighter, she yanked the smoking remains from the oven, extinguished our artistic aspirations with a single wet towel, and flung open the kitchen windows, hoping to vent the lingering stench of melted plastic. Our dreams of self-sufficiency dissipated in a cloud of acrid smoke. The true panic set in about an hour later when Mom, now calm but decidedly irritated, uttered those most terrifying words. "Wait until your father gets home." That hour stretched into what felt like a lifetime. Every creak of the house echoed like impending judgment. My sister suggested we escape and live in a treehouse. I began calculating whether we could blame our catastrophe on spontaneous combustion. When Dad finally arrived, still clad in his work clothes and anticipating dinner, he paused mid-step and sniffed the air. "What happened?" he asked, his tone a curious blend of intrigue and foreboding. My sister and I launched into a chaotic confession filled with crayon mishaps, misguided science, and tragic misunderstandings. He listened, rubbing his forehead. Finally, with the wisdom of a seasoned parent, he said, "Next time, maybe ask your mother first." And just like that, he shook his head and sat down to eat, as if small domestic fires were merely another Tuesday evening. After that episode, we used only metal pans and adhered to the principle of supervision, though I still fondly recall that moment of chaos as equal parts terror and awe, wrapped in the exhilarating notion that we had nearly invented a new art form: abstract fire. Those afternoons became a handmade time capsule of the 1960s. We didn't have store-bought kits or meticulously organized supplies. We had whatever we could scavenge: a cereal box, a coffee can, a stray bit of yarn. We may not have realized it then, but the process far outweighed the product. It was about the sheer joy of creation, of turning scraps into something vibrant and personal. By evening, the table was a riot of glitter and glue, a messy, hopeful gallery of our imaginations. It was more than just crafting. It was childhood itself. Sometimes it was unsupervised and slightly flammable, but it was always handmade.
Stay tuned for more of The Rocket Kid Chronicles.
Up next, when the future showed up in wood paneling.